You are familiar with the tale of Davy Crockett, the king of the wild frontier, the courageous hero of the Alamo, rifle in hand, battling until his final breath. However, what if I revealed that the reality is much a stranger? The individual behind the legend was a skilled manipulator of his own image, his adversaries, and even the circumstances surrounding his death. This is the narrative that has been concealed, the account of a destitute dropout who outwitted one of America's most formidable presidents, a war hero who paid someone else to fight on his behalf, a politician who fabricated his autobiography to propagate a falsehood. And that legendary last stand at the Alamo? The facts do not align. Was he a martyr or merely a man fleeing from disgrace? Why did Andrew Jackson pledge to annihilate him? How did an obscure individual from the backwoods rise to fame, only to disappear amidst a haze of gunpowder and enigma? And what were his true last words before the Alamo succumbed? Disregard the fairy tales. This is the Davy Crockett that history has overlooked, and the one you will never anticipate. But prior to our exploration, please remember to like and subscribe to our channel to support our community. Davy was born in 1786 in Greene County, North Carolina. Although it is now part of Tennessee, at that time, the area was under the jurisdiction of North Carolina. His father, John, managed a grist mill until floods devastated both the mill and the local populace. By 1795, financial hardship compelled John to declare bankruptcy. The family struggles became so severe that John bound his son by contract to Jacob Sealer. Raised in the isolated wilderness, young Davy received little formal education, partly due to his rebellious disposition and tendency to skip classes when he was enrolled. Instead, a knowledgeable neighbor provided him with 100 days of instruction. John tried to force the boy back into school, but Davy, fiercely independent, chose to leave and carve out his own destiny. In his early years, Crockett took on various jobs as a farm laborer or tended to cattle. Eventually, he returned home to assist his father in settling their debts. Davy Crockett challenged societal norms, a characteristic that was particularly evident in his romantic endeavors. While working on John Kennedy's property, he developed an affection for Kennedy's niece, Amy Summer. However, a complication emerged. She was already engaged to Kennedy's son. Undeterred, Crockett convinced a wedding guest to marry him, only for her to select someone else. Subsequently, Davy married Polly Finley, despite her family's disapproval. Together, they raised 3 children, one of whom later represented Tennessee in Congress. Unfortunately, Polly passed away in 1815. Crockett then married Elizabeth Patton, a widow with whom he had 3 more children. Like many notable individuals of his time, Crockett's public career commenced in the military. In 1813, Creek warriors assaulted Fort Mims in what is now Alabama, killing nearly all those inside. This incident sparked support for the Creek War, a complex conflict between competing Creek factions. American forces allied with the Lower Creeks under the command of Andrew Jackson, while the Red Stick Creeks received support from British and Spanish allies. Crockett joined Tennessee's militia and engaged in combat. Later, he confessed to preferring hunting in Alabama over fighting against indigenous tribes. Nevertheless, he remained in service under Jackson until he became disillusioned. Eventually, he hired a substitute, a struggling laborer, to meet his military obligations until his discharge in 1815. Despite its flaws, Crockett's military experience inspired him to seek civic positions. He became a commissioner, assisting in delineating the borders of Tennessee's newly established Lawrence County. This marked the beginning of his rapid rise in local governance. By 1817, he was appointed Justice of the Peace. The following year, he attained the rank of lieutenant colonel in Tennessee's 57th Militia Regiment. After succeeding in private business endeavors, he returned to politics in 1821. Representing Lawrence and Hickman counties in Tennessee's legislature, his policies mirrored the struggles his father, John, faced while raising a family on the frontier. He advocated for populist initiatives and opposed the heavy taxation of impoverished citizens. These positions garnered him passionate support from small farmers and laborers across the state, but also led to formidable opposition. These adversaries would eventually orchestrate his political demise. Crockett's rise from obscurity to national recognition was remarkable. Although his career encountered significant challenges, He ran multiple campaigns for the U.S. House of Representatives. After suffering a defeat in his 1825 attempt, he secured consecutive victories in 1827 and 1829. However, he faced defeat again in 1831 against William Fitzgerald. Undaunted, he regained his position in 1833, narrowly defeating Fitzgerald, only to be decisively beaten by Adam Huntsman in 1835. While he was effective in his role, Crockett devoted considerable effort to shaping his public persona, publishing memoirs and giving speeches that highlighted his rugged, charismatic frontiersman image. In 1834, Crockett published a memoir entitled The Life of David Crockett, which he claimed to have authored himself. This assertion, however, was misleading. The book was co-written with Thomas Chilton, a congressman from Kentucky and his political ally. The narrative focused on Crockett's experiences on the frontier while downplaying his legislative accomplishments and entrepreneurial ventures. Although it was widely read in Tennessee, his political aspirations were ultimately thwarted by Andrew Jackson's faction, which held significant sway over the political scene in Tennessee. Having established his reputation as a military leader, the future president also played a role in founding Memphis. Tensions with Jackson's supporters began in 1821 when Crockett supported Whig candidate William Carroll over Edward Ward for the governorship. Initially, this decision paid off. Carroll won and rewarded Crockett for his support. However, Jackson never forgave the perceived betrayal by his former subordinate. The rift deepened in 1823 when Crockett defeated Jackson's nephew-in-law, William Edward Butler, for a seat in the state assembly. Unaware of Jackson's lingering animosity, Crockett underestimated the influence of his opponent. In 1824, Jackson initiated his first presidential campaign. Although he won both the popular vote and the electoral plurality, John Quincy Adams ultimately attained the presidency. Crockett's relief was fleeting. Jackson decisively defeated Adams in 1828. Crockett firmly supported settlers who occupied government-owned land in western Tennessee. His opposition to Jackson aligned him with the Whig Party, and he even advocated for the closure of West Point, contending that it unfairly favored the elite. His most principled action was his opposition to Jackson's 1830 Indian Removal Act, making him the only Tennessee delegate to do so. While Cherokee communities commended his defiance, many voters in Tennessee reacted negatively, which contributed to his electoral defeat in 1831. After his defeat, Crockett found himself in a precarious situation. The prospect of Texas achieving statehood intrigued him. He promised his friends that if Martin Van Buren, an ally of Jackson, won the 1836 election, he would head to Texas to lead a rebellion. When Van Buren, known as the Little Magician, emerged victorious, Crockett fulfilled his promise. He declared to a journalist, "I informed my constituents that I would serve them faithfully, but if they rejected me, they could be damned. I would go to Texas." Utilizing his charisma, Crockett gathered volunteers for Texas's fight for independence, even giving a speech at the courthouse in Madison County, surrounded by supporters. Hundreds assembled to listen to his passionate pro-Texas speech. By early 1836, he arrived in Texas, pledging his loyalty to its provisional government. His signed oath stated, "I have sworn allegiance and enlisted as a volunteer," and he soon marched toward the Rio Grande with U.S. recruits. On February 8th, he entered the Alamo mission in San Antonio. This location was crucial to the defense strategy of the nascent Texas Republic. Originally a Spanish mission, it had transformed into a fortified outpost during conflicts with Apache raiders. After being transferred from Spain to Mexico in 1821, the Alamo was captured by Texan rebels in 1835. Just 2 weeks after Crockett's arrival, the compound was surrounded by the army of Mexican General Santa Anna. The defenders, taken by surprise, withstood a siege from Santa Anna's formidable forces. The Mexican troops encountered intense resistance, yet gradually advanced under the protection of artillery. Crockett and his men fought valiantly. He spearheaded attacks on 4 huts occupied by Mexican forces nearby, thwarting enemy advances through close combat and cannon fire from the Alamo. Another counteroffensive momentarily succeeded, but hope dwindled as requests for reinforcements went unanswered. Following a 13-day siege, Santa Anna's final assault concluded the Alamo's defense in just 90 minutes. Crockett met his end amidst the turmoil. Accounts vary, Some assert he fell during a courageous last stand. Others assert he surrendered and was executed without trial. Regardless of the circumstances Davy perished that day, his remains cremated alongside his fellow defenders. The exact location of his ashes remains unknown. As the most renowned casualty of the siege, he became an emblem of Texas's victorious struggle for independence. Davy's likeness, adorned with his iconic raccoon skin hat typical of frontier hunters, has inspired generations of American youth. His legacy as the archetypal rugged pioneer endures as a significant cultural reference. Raised in the wilderness and adept in hunting, this persona contained elements of truth. However, he was also astute, intentionally shaping that image to further his political and business goals. His demise in the pursuit of expanding America's territory while influencing Texas seems tragically appropriate. The congressman's dramatic downfall solidified his legacy, rendering him an immortal figure as a martyr of expansion and independence. So, who exactly was Davy Crockett? A selfless hero? A shrewd opportunist? Or perhaps something in between? He met his end at the Alamo, or did he? The Mexicans asserted that he surrendered. Survivors insisted he fought until the very end. But here lies the truth. Davy's remains were never discovered. Only ashes scattered by the wind. Consider this. Why would a man who built his reputation on integrity fabricate his memoir? What prompted him to escape to Texas after losing everything? Was the Alamo a noble last stand, or merely a desperate attempt to reshape his legacy? The man who referred to himself as the king of the wild frontier understood one fundamental truth. History is not recorded by the courageous. It is chronicled by those who survive. In Davy Crockett, he left no survivors to narrate his truth. Share your thoughts below. Hero or fraud? Martyr or mythmaker? And if you are still questioning how a bankrupt dropout managed to outsmart a president, perhaps you have underestimated Davy Crockett all along.